Thank you all for coming tonight. This is the second second evening in our Arctic Leadership Lecture Series. So just so we all know who's in the room, there's some people in person in Schaible. Some of these people are students in the class, and others are members of the public. We've invited members of the public to listen to the guest lectures. And then on Zoom, you can't see them, but we have many students on Zoom, many students in the class on Zoom, and also some public community members on Zoom as well. And for those of you who don't know, in this lecture series, we are spotlighting people who are leading in Alaska and in the Arctic from a variety of different sectors: politics, justice, the military, Native leadership, etc. And so tonight, we're very, very fortunate to have two Alaskan state senators speaking with the group. The first is State Senator Scott Kawasaki, who was born in Tokyo, Japan, and moved to Fairbanks, Alaska with his family in 1980 when he was 5 years old, where he has lived ever since. Senator Kawasaki earned a BS in biomedicine from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, right here. And while attending UA, he chartered the first national collegiate fraternity in Alaska, Sigma Phi Epsilon, and was involved in leadership and internship programs statewide. He was first elected to the Fairbanks City Council in 2006, and at the time was the youngest member serving in that body. He has been an elected official for Alaska since then, going from City Council to the Alaska State House to the Alaska State Senate, where he's now representing District P. So thank you again, Scott, Senator Kawasaki, for joining us tonight. I'll turn it over to you in just a second. Let me go ahead and introduce State Senator Elvi Gray-Jackson. She began her public service career with the municipality of Anchorage 42 years ago. In 1988, she began working for the Anchorage municipality with the municipality of Anchorage. She started working with the Anchorage Assembly, first as an administrative assistant, then senior budget analyst, and finally as director of the Assembly Budget Office. In 2005, she worked for Municipal Light and Power as director of the Alaska Energy Rail Belt Authority. She served on the Anchorage Assembly from 2008 to 2017 and served as chair from April 2016 to April 2017. She was elected to the Alaska State Senate in 2018 and was reelected in November 2022. She's a recipient of the Women of Achievement Award and has received many other distinguished awards. Most recently, she was interviewed by the History Makers, the nation's largest African-American video oral history collection. Her video will be housed in the Library of Congress. She is a graduate of the University of Alaska Anchorage and has one son, Raymond.
As a middle child among 7 siblings, I naturally became the go-to person in my family. And so nearly 43 years ago, I moved to Alaska, where most of my career has been dedicated to public service. I began as the executive secretary to the public transit director. Then I spent 17 years working for the Anchorage Assembly before serving as an assembly member for 9 years. Since 2019, I've had the honor of serving as a state senator, and I'm just truly convinced that public service is my true calling, because it's always been a passion and it continues to drive my work today. Alaska is truly a unique place. We live in the largest state in the country, yet we have the lowest population. And to me, this means that being a good leader in Alaska requires considering the needs of the entire state, not just one's own separate district. Effective leadership involves communicating with diverse communities, understanding perspectives, and I'm sorry, I lost my thought. Understanding perspectives that are different from our own and working towards solutions that benefit all Alaskans. Fortunately, we have strong leadership in our state, leaders who continue to guide us toward a better future. My leadership style is a blend of transformational, democratic, and coaching approaches. I strive to inspire and to motivate, encouraging my employees to actively participate so that their voices can be heard. I leave with an open mind. I'm always maintaining honesty and integrity throughout the process. I also believe in leading by example, fostering a workplace culture built on trust, honesty, and strong ethical values. I expect my staff to uphold these same principles as we work together toward shared goals. I'm sorry, I'm trying to move my cursor down on this computer and it's not mine and I'm just having a hard time. I apologize. Okay, give me a second here. Sorry about that. One of the biggest challenges that I face is getting bills across the finish line. This requires meeting with colleagues in both chambers, with those who share my values and meeting with those who don't share my values, with whom I disagree with, so that in order to communicate, in order to communicate why my bills matter, not just to me, but to the communities that they impact. Building understanding and finding common ground is essential to advancing meaningful legislation. Representing the interests of my constituents, maintaining strong ethics, and being an active listener are really essential qualities of being a good leader. And I meant to say your constituents if you're talking about being a good leader, not mine. Alaska's small population is an advantage in many, many ways because it allows us to personally know our leaders and to build meaningful connections, unlike larger communities where this is more difficult. For anyone looking to become a leader or create change in Alaska, my advice is to stay open-minded and always prioritize the interests of the people you serve, not yours. While having your own goals and directives as a leader is very, very important, truly listening to those around you is key. This principle has always guided me in leadership, and I encourage both current and aspiring leaders to embrace it as well. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening.
Appreciate being offered the opportunity to chat and talk to aspiring young folks, young leaders. I was once in your place. I went to school at the University of Alaska, Fairbanks. My first election to the student body, I lost, but I got appointed. And so it sort of left me in a trajectory to get involved in politics and government. My background is actually biochemistry. My dad was a scientist, researcher. I wanted to go into research, thought I might go into medical school. WWAMI was around, taking the top 10 applicants, which it's a pretty great thing to be able to do that, because the top 10 of 100 participants is generally pretty easy to go, versus if you're in Washington State, they have like 20,000 applicants for the WWAMI program. And so I was thinking about going to medical school. I got involved in this politics along the way, got involved in student government and activism. And I remember the debates here in Juneau at the time were all about student funding and school funding and how we're going to pay for the university. And I just thought that they were so short-sighted when I thought about it that I decided to get more involved in politics. And one of the first bills that got passed in the legislature when I got elected was a bill to double the number of seats in WWAMI, which was something that I was advocating for back, 20 years ago as a student. And I remember telling the senator of the neighborhood, who I ran for the House, beat his friend who was in the House. I said, if you had actually done the things that students really wanted 20 years ago, then I wouldn't have run for office and I wouldn't have had to beat your friend who was in the House. But you get involved for many, many different reasons in government and politics, and really it's all about sort of helping to change people's lives. And that's really what sort of guided my my leadership, working now in this bipartisan Senate, working with people like Elvi Gray-Jackson, who's a downtown kind of Anchorage person, or working with my roommate who lives just across the street, Senator Donnie Olson, who represents Nome and Northern Alaska. It's the Arctic is changing. The Arctic's changing very quickly. The new administration that just came in that makes things change even faster. being here and being a part of this is just so rewarding because it's we're really changing about we're changing sort of the last frontier as we go. Like every day, there's unique challenges that we're all working on, whether it's like the school funding issues that you hear about, or something as small as developing parts of rural Alaska to be able to farm. It's just an interesting time to be here right now, and an interesting time to be in college too right now. So some of the challenges, because I was in the legislature, before I was in the legislature, I also worked at the hospital at the hospital in administration, and so I kind of had a background in health and social services and education. And those are the two committees I least wanted to get involved in. And it's because I've done it before. I kind of wanted to learn new things. So I got pigeonholed in this energy issue in oil and gas. No Democrat wanted to be on the oil and gas committee. Everybody wanted to be on either education or health and social services, except for me. So I got placed on oil and gas, which then became the special committee on energy. And so I've been sort of focused on energy related issues, on environmental issues, trying to ensure that we have low cost energy and a diverse energy portfolio for our state. Let's see, advice. I would just say, getting involved in any way possible is pretty cool. I spent the last couple of days, he's a high school student who got engaged at the school board level, and he was on the school board in the Mat-Su Valley. And the Mat-Su Valley had a referendum or something at the school board level to basically prevent or not have to have a young student on their local school board. So of course he's in high school, he's feisty, he wanted to get out there and fight. And so he rallied the students around this movement to sort of exclude student voices on the school board. He lost that battle, but it kept him interested. And so now this last couple of days, he'd been here in Juneau lobbying legislators to pass a state law that would ensure that every school board has a student participant in it. And his story is very compelling. And he's an articulate young person, and it's cool that he's spending his off year before he goes off to college doing that kind of thing here in Juneau. You can be interested in any kind of facet, and you'll be able to find some of those things that we're working on right here in Juneau. And so that's sort of my advice for folks who might want to be interested in becoming leaders in the Arctic. I'll tell you, it's really easy. There was a story that I just remember as a young freshman. As a young freshman legislator, I was the youngest member at 30 or 29 when I got in. And I was there with a bunch of this is a story told by an old guy who'd been the rules chairman and who'd been there for a long time. And he'd been there for 30 years. And he said, man, when I came in, I was young and I was a kid. And I was looking at everybody like, man, these guys are amazing. I've seen them on TV. I've seen them on news. These guys are just, these guys are shaking this state up. And these guys are just amazing people. And I thought to myself as a young kid, how did I get elected? And he goes, now that I've been here for 30 years, I look at these new people and I say, how the hell did that guy get elected? And so I think there's a lot of folks in this Capitol, and all of us have well-meaning, the kinds of things that they want to do they are truly committed to doing well for their constituents. Not everybody, I think everybody has that in their mind. I disagree with some of those things, but it's I think it takes us all. And that's what's so unique about the legislative branch. It's a 40-member House, a 20-member Senate. We come from very urban areas like Senator Gray-Jackson, come from very suburban or rural areas like the member Mike Cronk, who actually represents just north of Fairbanks, also represents the largest Senate district in the United States. It's roughly the size of Texas. So we've got all this diversity. We come down here and we learn that maybe we might disagree on a couple things here and there, but we actually agree on more than we think. And we've got 110 days left before the end of the legislative session. We all sort of bring a different perspective, and that's what I hope to do in the legislature here in the Senate from the next 110 days. So thanks again for the opportunity. I guess both of us are prepared to take any questions anyone might have.
Well, thank you both so much for taking time out of your schedules. I know it's a very busy time for both of you. The legislative session has kicked off. You're very busy. And so thank you both for making time for our students and members of the public. Anyone online or anyone in the audience here in Schaible, do you have a question for either or both senators?
Hi, so I'm Shahina Shahid. I have a question for both of you. So in Fairbanks, we see there's going to be a few school closures that are going to happen. What do you think about the work towards rising the BSA? Do you think that it's going to be something that's able to be passed or mobilized? Also, for the other senator, I was researching that you're also from New Jersey, which I am from as well. So I would like to know, how do you experience the racialization in New Jersey versus in Alaska? Did you find there's more mobility, upward mobility in Alaska versus in New Jersey?
Well, quite frankly, when I was in New Jersey, I wasn't involved in politics at all. I didn't even vote, basically because I was raised Jehovah's Witness. I'm not now, and they don't vote and get involved in politics. So I don't really know too much about Jersey politics. And coolness, you're from Jersey like me. I want to know what part though. I was born and raised in Newark. But anyway, I think your question was, do we believe that the BSA is going to be accomplished during this legislative session? I hope that was your question.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was anyway, but no, I'm confident that we're going to have an increase in the BSA. I would really love for it to be what is needed, but we'll just see, because we have not just our Senate bipartisan majority, but we also have a minority, and in the House there's 21 in the bipartisan majority, and then there's 19 in the minority. So it just depends, but I'm confident that we're going to have an increase, and I'm confident that it's going to be an increase to the BSA and not just a one-time funding like it happened last year.
Yeah, I agree with Miss Senator Gray-Jackson as well. I think whatever we come up with, it should be a sizable increase to the BSA. It should be sustainable over multiple years. And one thing we just heard, because leadership, and Senator Gray-Jackson can maybe chime in on that, is that they met with the governor, and the governor said he'd like to see an education bill early this year, which is kind of unique in that I think he's getting a lot of pressure from a lot of folks, a lot of parents, a lot of people, a lot of students who are facing potential school closures across the state. And so, yeah, we think that there's going to be an increase. We're not sure what that means as far as school district here in Fairbanks, because Fairbanks is pretty unique. I don't know how they're going to balance the budget. I think there probably will be some school closures in Fairbanks, but I don't know. I'm hoping it won't be as rough as they've predicted.
Yeah, and we did the leadership in both the House and the Senate did have a meeting with the governor, and one of the things that he did say is that he wants us, he supports us in dealing with education right away. So we'll look forward to seeing the results of his comment and the fact that we're ready.
Great. I think there's a question on Zoom. Is that right?
Yes, I'm going to be reading a question from Hannah. She says, I know Gray stated her type of leadership style. So Scott, how would you describe your leadership style?
Oh, I missed what kind of leadership style.
Yeah, actually, my last name is Gray-Jackson. It's a hyphenated name. But
what did you say yours was?
Gosh, it was 3 different things,
So I guess my leadership style, I like to bring people together. I've got a very diverse team, even within our own in this office. So there's You know, we needed a millennial because they knew how to operate all the screen devices. But we also have somebody who's older than me, who's been around for a long time, from the military. We brought together, I mean, both men and women. I think bringing people together is and finding out what our commonalities are is really the best kind of leadership that's out there. I like to engage people who disagree with me because I think having disagreements, but not necessarily being disagreeable is kind of an important part and something that you learn down here in Juneau. Again, I mentioned that there's 40 members of the House, 20 members of the Senate from very diverse backgrounds and very diverse districts. And each one of us is trying to represent our district, which is, for me, just downtown Fairbanks and Fort Wainwright. And being able to learn and know what other folks are thinking in other parts of the state, and trying to culminate that into one budget, one piece of legislation that'll affect all of us is really important. And so having those outside voices is excellent.
Right, and back to my leadership, in a nutshell, I lead by example.
You guys, we have another question on Zoom. This one is from Gretchen. She says, thank you both for your time and perspective. Senator Elvi Gray-Jackson, you mentioned prioritizing constituent values guiding your work. Has that ever been in conflict with your own values? And if so, how do you navigate that?
Well, there's probably, I can count on one hand, maybe 2 or 3 issues that I won't compromise on, okay? And one of the biggest issues is equal rights for everyone. Everyone, I will not compromise on that. But I try to when it comes to, my constituents and bills and issues, I try to never base my vote on an issue based on my personal opinion. I try to base my vote on what I think is the right thing for the community as a whole. And that's for most issues, but like I said, there are a couple that, it doesn't matter what my constituents believe, but I gave an example, like equal rights for everybody, and there are some folks who don't believe that, in particular, equal rights for our LGBTQ community, but I will never, never change how I feel about that, and I've probably made a few of my constituents not too happy, but I can live with that.
I'll just mention that going off that, the district that I represent is a district that Trump won by 17 points. And I won it by 3 points. And so there were a lot of people who voted for President Trump and then voted for me as a Democrat. And I think it's because of the way we work. I mean, I think it's the way that my office has worked with folks, regardless of whether they serve in one party or another. When it comes down to it, we all value things like clean air and clean water. We all value, I think, mostly equality. And we all value, family. And I think when it boils down to it, I think a lot of people can distill it to just a couple things that we all value. And that is really what sort of makes the difference.
I'd love to make a comment. I'm a proud Democrat, but when I'm elected to office, I'm elected to work for everybody. And I do. I don't treat my Democrat constituents any better or answer my emails to them any quicker than anybody else. I treat all of my constituents the same because even folks who haven't voted for me and even folks who don't like me, I respond to everybody. I do my own emails and because that's the way I'm just supposed to behave. And it's easy for me. It really is.
Another question in Schaible here in the auditorium. Anyone have a question? Okay, thank you. Yeah, you can get the mic to her.
Hello, my name is Darlene Herbert, and I wanted to ask, about this education thing. Everybody in Alaska got to have education. I know there's little villages here and there and everywhere. And people are getting worried about, schools closing down And well, I think part of the reason the schools are closing down is because people are leaving Alaska. And I think that's part of the problem. And I think education is the most important thing, and it should be the most important thing for you guys to vote on. And we got to have education for our young people to keep going and be in the legislature someday. And I was wondering, Trump, how much is he going to change things in Juneau for the legislature? Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna be frank, okay? It's a scary situation. And somebody used a word in the newspaper, it's a catastrophe. And it really is. I mean, ending, I don't know how far it's gonna go, but ending federal programs and federal grants, our budget depends a lot, like other states, a lot on federal money coming to us. That's what balances our budget, in particular when it comes to education. So I'm a positive person, I'm optimistic, and I'm gonna remain hopeful.
Yeah, I guess me too. I'm going to remain optimistic and hopeful because really there's no alternative, and we know that that this president has has put a pause on a lot of things, a lot of funding that goes to things like the Interior AIDS Association just sent us all an email about their vouchers for housing, things like healthcare or things like SNAP benefits. All of those things are kind of have all slowed down, and these are for people who are sort of right at the edge that really need the help. What we can do as legislators is that we can push back, and we have the power of the purse. We have a budget. We can. I mean, we're sending a resolution to the president here shortly, talking about don't name our mountain. Don't name our mountain Mount McKinley. Just let us name our own monuments. And so we as a legislature have a lot of power in dictating how hard it's going to hurt coming from this particular president. And it really just depends on where you stand on issues too. I think the president did say he's going to open up more areas to mining and oil development, and for our budget, that's great. But we need to make sure that if they're going to open up areas in the state, that it's not harming our environment, that it is done in a safe manner, that it doesn't take land from people who have land, and that it doesn't impact the wildlife and moose populations and things like that other people care about. So I think both of us are pretty optimistic. It's going to be a challenge for the next couple of years, but we see that coming.
Now we have at least one more question on Zoom. Do you want to go ahead?
Yes, we have a couple on Zoom. I will start with Abby. For both Senator Gray-Jackson and Senator Kawasaki, what leadership skills make you an effective senator? More generally, what leadership skills are important for senators to have?
Well, I'm gonna try and briefly answer that question. I think, like I said a moment ago, I lead in a nutshell by example. And what I mean by that is, I'm trustworthy. Confidentiality is really important. My ethics is probably higher than most, not to knock anybody else down, but and so the examples that I show to the way I lead and my behavior on a daily basis, I like for my staff to follow my behavior, and they do. And I think that has been really, really effective for me throughout my time serving in public service, because like I mentioned earlier, I've been in public service for a very long time, and I've had staff in different positions that I've had in public service. And I've had my staff say to me, yeah, I like the way you operate. I like that that you're honest. I like that you can be trusted. I like that confidentiality is so important to you. They share with me what the behavior that they see in me.
And I'll just say that, you know, I think while it doesn't guarantee anything, if you win a reelection, you know, that's kind of like, hey, we think that you've done a pretty good job. It doesn't necessarily go that way in all cases, obviously. Recent elections, you know, considered. But, you know, that sort of asserts that, yeah, that guy's done a pretty decent job. And, you know, I think that's what I've heard talking to people in the district that I've represented is, boy, we really hate your politics. We really don't like that you're a flaming liberal Democrat, but we really like that you communicate with us or that you talk to us or that you listen to me when I tell you something. And so as far as like leadership skills go, being able to listen, try and find commonalities between people who may disagree. My neighbor flies a Jesus is my savior, Trump is my president flag. And we don't really talk much about politics, but you know, we can sit down and have a light beer together and talk about road maintenance and how we make our schools better because we care about our kids and we care about commerce. We care about those types of things. So I think making sure that we have some, we are able to share commonalities.
Is there another question on Zoom?
I see one here about my experience working in local politics in Anchorage and whether there are differences between Anchorage politics and state politics. I'm really happy to answer that question if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. One of the biggest differences in local versus state politics is that things move a lot faster. You know, when I was on the Anchorage Assembly, the way it operates is there's an ordinance that's introduced. There's a couple of weeks for it to be advertised. It's heard at an assembly meeting and a public hearing is held at the assembly meeting. And oftentimes the same meeting where there's a public hearing and then there's debate, that ordinance is acted upon one way or the other. At the state level, it's a very, very long process for bills to make it to the finish line. You start with, for example, you know, there's a bill introduced on the Senate floor. Then it has to be heard on the Senate floor 3 times. It goes to committees that's where the public hearings are held in committees. And often on average, it's 2 committees. And so once the bill, and if it has a fiscal note, the last committee is Finance Committee. And once the bill makes it through committees, then it goes to the Rules Committee. That is the committee that moves the bill to the floor for a vote. Okay. Once it makes it to the Senate floor for a vote, then it goes to the House and the exact same process happens. And that's one of the reasons why bills take so long to pass. You know, there are other issues too, but that's, you know, one of the reasons. And that's the biggest difference in local politics than compared to state politics. The biggest things take too long. You know, we have constituents out there wondering, well, when is this bill going to make it to the finish line? What's the holdup? Because a lot of constituents don't realize or understand what the process is. But, you know, and then you have committee chairs who may not like your bill and they won't give you a hearing because they personally don't like your bill, which in my opinion is totally unacceptable.
So there are
Thank you.
more questions online. I don't know if there's anybody in person, but we can keep going down that list.
There are a couple of people here in Schaible that would like to ask.
Okay.
And we do want to be cognizant of your time. Do you have a hard stop at a certain time for the 2 senators?
I have a hard stop at 7. What time is it right now? 6:21. Yeah, actually, I had a phone call that I had to take during this, and I'm really, really sorry. Yeah, but you know, that's the life of a legislator. But anyway, no, let's go on until
We'll go to
Okay. Thank you so much. All right, go ahead.
Thank you both, senators, for your time this evening. I know certainly in the life of a senator, it is very busy, so we appreciate you being here. My name is Teresa. I'm a graduate student here at the university, and I heard as you both described your leadership styles, Senator Kawasaki, you highlighted the strength of diversity in your team, and Senator Elvi Gray-Jackson, I really commend and share your commitment to equal rights for everyone. And I'm wondering, how will each of you both protect and prioritize the heart of those values in the wake of recent executive orders that seek to roll back equity, accessibility, and anti-discriminatory programming?
Yeah, it's really disheartening because, you know, I mean, I like listening to the news when I'm getting ready to come to the office because I want to stay on top of what's happening nationwide. But when I hear nonsense like getting rid of DEI programs, it's disheartening, you know. And when it really is. And I'll talk a little bit about what I've done as far as, you know, making sure that everybody in my community is recognized and realize that I care about all of them. When I was on the Anchorage Assembly for 9 years, I had a resolution recognizing every single culture that you can think of. Hispanic Month, Black History Month, Martin Luther King, Filipino Month, all of them. And when I left the assembly, I made sure that the person who took my place followed suit. But I made a commitment that if I ever get to the legislature, I'm not going to just do resolutions. I'm going to do bills so that these cultural recognition can be in state statutes forever. Okay, and I started out my first year in 2019. After my first session, I was successful in getting Black History Month in state statutes, Alaska Native Heritage Month in state statutes. Last year, Filipino Month is in state statutes now. What am I missing? I brought forward a bill to put Hispanic Month, and I'm going to continue. I'm gonna do Pride Month eventually, but I'm doing one at a time. But I think it's really important because our community realize that, I mean, this is the way to let our community know that they're all part of the communities as a whole.
Yeah, and I'll just say that I think really what this administration is trying to do is disenfranchise people and disenfranchise the public. And the way we fight that is doing the opposite here at the state level, making sure that we recognize folks for their value, because everybody has value. If there's policies that are going to come in place from this administration or this governor's administration, because now we hold the gavels as chairs of committees, we bring those people forward and we can grill them. And I think that's something that we as Democrats haven't been in control of the Senate or the House for a long time. But in this age, we have some Democrats and Republicans, Democrats that are in control. And so we will hold this governor more accountable than prior years. And we'll hold this administration and presidential administration accountable as well.
There's a question about what's been your favorite bill that you passed, or what was the most difficult. And I'd like to start off by saying there's been several bills that are really, really important to me. One is mental health education, K through 12. But one that really stands out is making Juneteenth a paid state holiday. That really stands out, and it stands out because you know, slaves weren't really freed until 1776, June 1776. I hope I got that year right. But anyway, when I heard that Congress was about to approve a bill making Juneteenth a paid state holiday in 2021, I'm like, nope, got to do it here too. And I had thought about it, and right away I introduced a bill in 2021, and it didn't go anywhere. And I was okay with that because I introduced it, but I didn't give up. And it took me 3 years, whatever the number was, to finally get that bill passed last session. And I was so honored that I finally made it to the finish line. But I was honored that the year before it passed the Senate 16-4, and even more honored that it passed majority Republican House by a vote of 37-3. It took time, but I know that anything worth fighting for is never easy. And going back now to my mental health bill, that is a big priority for me this session because I've been trying to get it to the finish line since like for, I don't know, 4 years. And it almost made it to the finish line twice. But I'm adamant and working really hard to get it to the finish line, not the second session of the 34th legislature, but the first session that we are now in.
Let's see, there's questions online. I don't know if there's anybody there, but we can take a question online here. It is regarding renewable energy for Alaska, steps to be taken to make it more concrete. I can tell you today in the Senate Arctic Affairs Committee, of which I'm a member, we did talk, we actually talked to our own UAF Gwen Holdman from the Alaska Center for Energy and Power, and we talked about how we can incorporate more renewables into the state. One of the problems that Alaska has is that we have, you know, you've got Fairbanks and there's a need in Fairbanks, and then there's a need in Anchorage, and there's a need further down in Kenai, but we're not all very well connected. So making sure that we have large capacity transmission lines between Fairbanks, Anchorage to Kenai is important. When that happens and we're all connected, and this goes out, you know, I mean, to Delta or even out in rural Alaska, when you get more connected, you can have a larger, say, wind farm or a larger solar farm that puts more power into the grid so that they could go all the way up and down, rather than having these sort of small pieces of renewable energy everywhere, which costs more, you know, per kilowatt, for instance.
Question in the room. Good evening, senators. Thank you for sharing this time and space with us. It's greatly appreciated. Nice to meet you all. My name is Taryn. I'm an undergrad in the Arctic and Northern Studies program, and also from New Jersey. Kate may represent.
Wow,
Holy
wow.
So my question for you tonight is, what lessons or values from your childhood do you bring into your leadership style?
You're asking me.
For both.
No, I'm sorry. I drifted for a minute, but no, I have an answer for you. Okay, I have an answer. And I'll start out with I have a lot of faith in God and, you know, the universe, but I don't believe in organized religion anymore. But I was, you know, brought up as Jehovah's Witness. I got baptized when I was 12. Okay, and I don't know if anybody there knows anything about Jehovah's Witnesses, but their whole mission is to save people's lives because they believe Armageddon's coming. And so part of that is going out what they call field service, and you're going to people's homes and knocking on doors, not at random doors. You have a list. Anyway, knocking on doors, trying to teach people the Bible and show them how they can save their life when Armageddon comes. And I, at 12 years old, I was knocking on doors. And not only was I knocking on doors, but I was at a program that they called a Pioneer, where you commit yourself to knocking on doors for 75 hours a month at 12. Okay, and I'm saying all that to say that, man, when you run for office, you knock on doors. So that really was a prerequisite for me being able to do what I do when I'm running for office down, because it was really easy for me. And I know that's the reason why it was easy for me, because I did it for many years as a child, but it so worked effectively. Because that's one of my favorite things to do when I'm running for office, knock on doors and talk to people.
Yeah, so I don't know how many INTJs there are out there. I'm sort of an introvert. I'd rather be reading a book. I've got books all over the place that I work on. And so being a little bit more extroverted was really tough as a young child. And I don't know where I got it along the way, but I felt that it was important to learn to meet people and learn to be able to knock on a door. And for folks that are thinking about running for office, she's absolutely right. You have to learn how to knock on a door and ask for something, ask for a vote. It is a challenge when I see freshman candidates that have never run before, never made themselves, you know, usually just sit back kind of like I did as a kid. go out there and actually say, hey, I'm Joe, I'm running to represent you in the state Senate. It's, I think, I don't know exactly where I learned that, but somewhere along the way, I'm glad I did. There's a, there's a message from Glenn about how the legislature's changed during my time in office. So I'm senior citizen as far as how many years I've been here in office. This is my 19th year in the state legislature. So this is my 19th year coming down from Fairbanks to Juneau to represent the district in Fairbanks. And it has changed. I mean, it has really changed in the last decade. And I know the answer that you kind of want to talk about is that, how has it been more divisive? I'll tell you, it is divisive. It does seem more divisive when you watch the news. It's not as bad as you watch the news where it's just 50-50 on everything. There's actually ways where we get together and agree on things. We have a piece of legislation coming through the State Affairs Committee, for instance, that's dealing with elections. There's members on one side that believed that the 2020 elections were stolen. And then there's people on this side that want to make sure that elections are available and open and transparent, and really everybody's able to get a chance to vote early or through mail. So, but we are working together on those bills. And so, as divided as it seems like Washington, D.C. is, I'll say it hasn't necessarily crept up to Alaska as much. I'm just hopeful. I think if you think about the demographics in the state of Alaska, there's 17% are registered Democrat, 25% are registered Republican. That means 60% are not registered as a party. And you might have extremes on the Democratic side or the Republican side, but most people are here. And I think that's why, like, for instance, I win an election in a Republican district. So I think things have changed a little bit. One thing that also I think is more difficult or easier, I don't know how to say it, but internet access. I mean, if you talk to folks 15 years ago, I was the first person that brought social media. I had a MySpace account, and I advertised all of the bills that I was introducing on MySpace. And now we've got Facebook. We have people that text us during committee meetings. It's gotten really fast, really quick to provide information to us. And I don't know if that's better or worse. It's where we're at right now with mass communications and technology. I think it's good, actually. I think it's on net good.
On a side note, it's not a question, but I just want to say this. In order to get things done, no matter what your values are, but in order to get things done, you have to work together. And I am truly, truly honored that, and I don't know how many other states are the same, but I'm truly honored and glad to be a participant in the fact that in both houses, the Senate and the House have bipartisan majorities. And I was in both Scott and I were in a bipartisan majority for the last 2 years, and we got stuff done. We are evidence that it really works. What we got done prove that it works when you work together. So I'm really, really thrilled to be in the Senate this year. Well, in session this year with both houses at the same levels. And again, I'm not sure what other states have that same issue.
I'm going to read another question off the Zoom for you guys. When it comes to renewable energy for Alaska, what steps can be taken to make it more concrete? And that question is coming from Kate.
Well, let me just start out by saying a couple sessions ago I had, there were several climate change bills, and I'm working together with Senator Olson, Senator Wielechowski, and I had one that established a climate change commission. And I'm about to reintroduce that bill. There's a little bit of work that has to happen to it, but I'm about to reintroduce that bill during this session.
Yeah, on energy and things like that. One thing again that I think Glenn asked the question earlier, like what things have changed. Things like wind power and solar have dropped in price, and before they were the coolest thing. They were super expensive. Nowadays you can get them for a fraction of what they were costing 15 years ago. We had a renewable energy fund 15 years ago, and it was about $500 million of money that would go out to help start things like they've got wind generation on Kodiak Island that produces probably 75% of their electricity. We have wind just down south over there near Nenana, or near Nenana, and that also produces a lot of energy. Now the costs have gone so far down that you could really, I mean, people can have their own. I mean, you see those things pop up all over people's houses these days. We're not as far as, say, like Germany is on reducing our climate impacts and using more renewable, but we're getting there, and I think it's only going to get faster and faster. As far as there's a question about climate change and climate impacts, especially in the Arctic. Yeah, I think Elvi mentioned the Climate Change Commission. We had a Climate Change Commission. We had it going for about a decade. This governor came in, this Governor Dunleavy. Governor Dunleavy took that Climate Change Commission, everything that was posted online, the website, the commission members' names and stuff like that, and old reports, and you can't find them on the internet anymore. And I just got to say, I know that there's people who don't necessarily believe that that we as the humans are causing climate change, but it's hard to stick your head in the sand and say that it's not happening. Climate change is happening. It's impacting everything from our fisheries to our rainy weather in Fairbanks in January. And the things that we can do, like a climate change commission, we're going to be talking about flood damages and how much flooding is costing and why insurance rates are going up on flooding. Those kinds of things are the things that we are working on and talking about here in the legislature related to climate change.
So I see a question that I would really like to make a comment on about our leaders born, our leaders made.
Yeah.
And so I truly consider myself a born leader. You know, I'm an Aries, and that's part of our no, Aries are leaders.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. And I say that I'm a born leader because I'm a middle child, and I was always the go-to person in the family. Always. That's one of the reasons why I was happy to leave New Jersey, to be quite honest. So I got tired of it, you know, but I've always been a leader. I didn't take any training to be a leader. It's just really, really natural for me. Not to sound arrogant, but it just is. But I think the second question is, can you learn to be a leader, or can you be taught to be a leader? Yeah, you can be taught to be a leader by somebody who is a leader, you know. And I think that my staff throughout, you know, different positions that I had, and I'll talk about my staff right now. And all my staff right now, except for one, are new working with me, and they see how I lead, and we talk about it, you know, and I see them kind of emulating some of my behavior, which I really love because it's really good, positive behavior in terms of being trustworthy and understanding how important confidentiality is, because a lot of people don't, you know, knowledge is power, you know. But anyway, I just really appreciate that my behavior is really a good reflection on my staff behavior and how they want to behave. And they're comfortable with it, which makes it easier.
As far as Born to Lead goes, this is for Amy. I don't know. I'll tell you what, I think it depends on who you role model yourself after as a young child. I would never have thought I'd be in politics, and definitely never have thought I'd be in politics this long, being more of an introvert as I am. I think that I had some great teachers growing up, whether it was in junior high or high school, that sort of led me that direction. I remember the first time I actually did something campaign related was my freshman year in high school. My history professor or history teacher, Don Gray, decided to run for office. He was a Democrat. Maybe why I became a Democrat and my mom and everybody else was Republicans, but he taught, and he said, "Oh, well, I'll give you extra credit if you decide to help out on campaign stuff." And so of course I wanted to help out on his campaign. I remember standing down in 92 at the corner near the Gaffney Gate at the military area. And this was when Bill Clinton was running for office for president. Bill Clinton being one of the first presidential candidates of a major party who didn't serve in the military. So of course it was really cold. I remember it was 40 below. And soldiers would come off and then like try and spit at us from their car, and it would freeze on the sign. But having sort of a leader like that, Don Gray, who I still talk to as a retired teacher, I think is important. And I think it's so when I say whether they're born or made, I think maybe a little bit of both. You know, Elvi's had this height advantage, so she's probably always the one picked to lead the basketball team, and definitely I was.
I've never played basketball. I'm 6 feet tall, and I've never played basketball.
Oh my gosh! You got to join the league.
I don't even like sports, to be frank.
We have another question here in Schaible. Go ahead.
So I had a question with the rise of ICE raids throughout the country right now, and Anchorage is the only sanctuary city within the state. What actions are taking place to protect undocumented individuals within the state?
Well, I'm not really 100% sure, but I would think that that the ACLU is working with immigrants and giving them really good advice, like what's happening nationally. They're telling them that they have rights, and I bet if I called the ACLU tomorrow, they would say that that's exactly what they're doing. You know, but who knows? I'm going to make this comment. I hope it doesn't come across the wrong way, but you know, the governor and the current president are friends, and maybe they're leaving our state alone. Who the heck knows, you know? But anyway, that's what I suspect is happening.
Yeah, I don't know what to think. I know that the Fairbanks Police Department officers and state troopers within the detachment up there in the Fairbanks area, if they've been asked to help enforce raids on folks that are immigrants in Fairbanks, I don't think that they would participate or participate very shallowly. And I hope that's what's going on in Anchorage. I hope that's what people are doing. A lot of this scare that's happening right now, especially for people who are immigrants to the state, is pretty, I don't know, it's pretty un-Alaskan to me.
Yeah, it is.
And, you know, I think if you don't look, there was this big debate this last summer about, oh, well, I'm a 5th generation Alaskan. And I thought, oh, 5 generations, that's a lot. I'm only 3rd generation Alaskan, but they were using it as proof that they were definitely more Alaskan than me. And I said, hey, unless you look like Maxine Dibert, who represents downtown Fairbanks and was born in Tanana and is Alaska Native and probably been, you know, she's probably like a 1000th generation Alaskan. We're all from somewhere else. And
that's true.
So I think, you know, I think people that want to come up here, people who want to work, people who want to make a better lives for their families or for themselves, and people who want to do good things, we should let them in. We should embrace them. I mean, we need more people to do those types of things.
I agree. Couple of comments. I was born and raised in Newark, New Jersey, and I was watching the news last week, and I could not believe the mayor of Newark, New Jersey was talking about how ICE has invaded their community. So I'm wondering if they're focusing on poor communities first. Who knows, you know, but it was interesting. I haven't heard anything about any ICE agent visits in Anchorage, have not, and I'm sure I would have heard if that was going on, but I haven't heard anything.
I actually have a question for you. This is Brandon. So the US has a new president who has quite an ambitious Arctic and specifically Alaska policy centered primarily on natural resource extraction. And I guess I just wonder what you think about his plans for Alaska. And I know that's federal policy and you deal with state policy, but still they intersect, right? And they're interlinked. And I just wondered if you could speak to challenges and opportunities, maybe specifically in this legislative session, that you foresee as Trump's Alaska policy sort of starts getting rolled out?
Like, I have one comment, and I'm sure that Scott will chime in and have more to say than I have to say, but I think he's overzealous. Number one, he's never been here. You know, he has no idea that it's not as simple as he thinks that it is, you know. But anyway, Scott.
Agreed. You know, there was a lot of discussion ramping up to the election cycle from some of our own political leaders and from the candidates for the presidency. And, you know, the simple fact is we're producing as a country more oil than we've ever produced. There's more in-service rigs than there have been ever in the history of the United States. And if you look at the numbers, we're producing more oil in the US and US territories than any other country, and by a lot, by a huge margin. So, you know, you can open up other parts of the state to more and more gas exploration or oil exploration, but it doesn't necessarily mean it comes online tomorrow. And in fact, when ANWR was opened up under the Trump administration in 2022, they opened it up and they said, okay, who wants to buy these 40 leases? There were only 10 people or 10 companies that came forward. And the state was one of those companies that paid for a lease in the wildlife refuge. So, I mean, that just sort of says, okay, we're going to open this area, but if only 10 of the 40 were even, you know, prospectively sold, then it's not really going to turn things around. And again, we still are the #1 in oil production in the world.
And the phrase that he's been using, the president, is drill, baby, drill. And I don't know how many of you folks remember Governor Palin, and that was like a phrase that she used often, drill, baby, drill. And I just feel like he doesn't have any idea of how things work in terms of drilling. That's my opinion, because that's all he keeps saying is drill, baby, drill. But anyway.
Thank you for those remarks. We have time for maybe one more question. Anyone on Zoom or anyone in Schaible? So let's have this question here in Schaible. And then we actually, we do this with all of our speakers in the lecture series. We're going to ask the students to come up to the front of the auditorium to take a picture with the senators on Zoom. But go ahead, thanks.
Hi, my name is Emiko Newman. Nice to see you, Senator Kawasaki. I'm friends with Seneca. So we've met before, but okay. So I'm a double major in environmental and energy resource engineering. I started engineering a year ago at UAF, and I want to get my minor in environmental policy. So I'm just putting that out there in case, you know, you need an intern or something.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Southeast Alaska in the Tongass National Forest, and my dad is a master guide. And when I was 2 months old, he was mauled by a brown bear, and it split his right tendon and cut it in his arm, in his hand. So he couldn't use his right arm. He's right-handed, but he's also ambidextrous. And so he unjammed the gum with his left hand as he was eating him and killed it. And that's my dad. And so he's the person that taught me how to think. He's the person that taught me how to look at Alaska and nature. And so I, first of all, just wanted to say thank you so much for everything you've said. I'm going to sleep better at night knowing that after hearing everything you've said, I know that it's not super straightforward, but what is, especially in politics where there's so many different backgrounds intersecting, but that's also the beauty, kind of the messy beauty of America and democracy. But I'm really interested in expanding protections. I say that with absolutely no, well, I have some authority. I'm like the president of Society of Women Engineers, but honestly, it's just me and some Girl Scouts, some robots, and some big firms trying to get interns. So, you know, I'm not interacting at the state level in any way or even the local, but I'm really interested in making sure that people can enjoy the Tongass and continue to learn, because my dad is well, I think he's great, but the way that he thinks and he approaches nature, I haven't really met very many people in my travels around the world and in Europe who I think have really connected with this very unique relationship, especially that, you know, Indigenous Alaskans have. And my fear is that I know that you said that it's not as simple as drill, baby, drill and all of that, but do you have any remarks about the current environmental policies and protections that are in place, not just for the Tongass, but for the Arctic, and making sure that people can continue to have this relationship with the living lands and waters of Alaska?
I think that a lot of the policies and EOs that President Biden put in place were good ones. You know, his interest was protecting the lands. And what we have in place now is he's disregarding all of it and just has tunnel vision, one focus. But I've always been supportive of protecting the environment. It's important. You have to look at both ways, you know. If you can drill and protect the environment at the same time, fine. But that's not often the case at all in some areas of our state.
Yeah, I agree. You know, a lot of a lot of the environmental protections that this new EPA administrator and perhaps the Secretary of the Interior are proposing are going to roll back protections for you know for certain areas of the state. You know, I think you as a as a state, we have to be more forward thinking. That you know you can mine a little here, you can cut some forest down, and it'll grow back, but you can't just devastate it and not have it return at all. They've done that with fish populations, for instance, in the Bering Sea, and fish returns have not returned, meaning those fish that normally come up the Yukon that were bycaught are no longer producing spawn for the next year. And that means that people who had lived for hundreds of years on the Yukon River are not able to smoke fish and have a different food supply. Their entire culture's changed in literally 2 decades worth of overfishing in the Bering Sea. So I think when we think about how we do protections of environment and why we don't just let everything out for lease is because you don't want this huge potential environmental mess. And over the next couple of months, we're going to be hearing more and more areas that potentially are going to be opened up. And as a state, we need to be engaged in making sure that if it is going to be opened up, that it's done with environmental protections in place. Some of the stuff that the state law has jurisdiction over.
There's some, I know that my time is up in 5 minutes, but there's some questions that I really have to answer. So may I suggest that please send me an email with your questions, because I do my own emails and I'd be more than happy to answer your questions via email or even a phone call for that matter.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that offer. So